Hey everybody, I'm Ryan. And that's Icarus, that's August, and that's Wilbur, more importantly. And today we're going to talk about Esper Midrange in Standard. This is going to be a deck tech, primarily talking about the card choices in the deck, natural play patterns in the deck, and things to be aware of when you play the deck. Without further ado, let's jump into it. So this is my Esper Midrange deck. And all in all, this is really the I play better cards than you deck in Standard. It 1/4 answers with counter magic and removal spells, and then just plays better cards than the opponent. Cards that 2-for-1 or apply a ridiculous amount of pressure or draw a bunch of cards, and they just overwhelm their opponent with card quality. That being said, give me a second and I'll divide this up. So this is what I would call the this is what I would call the 4 categories of this deck. We have removal, we have counter magic, we have threats, and then we have threat / removal, maybe try to 2-for-1, blah, 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 and Wandering Emperor. And then of course lands. Lands is nothing crazy to look at. We have some man lands in Restless Fortress. Plaza of Heroes is really, really nice in protecting our creatures, and a majority of them are legends. But other than that, it's nothing to super scoff at. I guess one other thing that you need to be kind of aware of is that Takenuma and Otawara are very, very often reduced in cost because most of our threats are legends. The removal is pretty self-explanatory. We're playing 2 cut down and 4 go for the throat. Go for the throat is just one of the best removal spells in Standard because there's not a lot of artifact threats, if any, that are being played in tier 1 or 2 decks. And then cut down you kind of need as a 1-mana removal to deal with soldiers and mono red. Make Disappear is in an incredibly good spot right now because most of the decks that are good are either ramp decks where if you cut off 1 or 2 ramp spells, the deck flounders and does nothing, or crazy I play better cards than you decks like this, where if you counterspell one of their major threats, untap, play one of your major threats, the game can end super, super quickly. And then we have a ton of just awesome I play better cards threats. We're playing 4 Wedding Announcement. Wedding Announcement, if it sits, is 3 creatures that eventually become 2/2s. And then if it sits for a really long time, it making your creatures bigger than your opponents and applying that a little bit more pressure when it does the Anthem effect is extremely powerful. And then sometimes when we flood the board, we can draw more than 1 card with it, because if you attack with 2 or more creatures, you draw a card instead of make a 1/1. Which is also very powerful when you have such a high density of powerful cards in your deck. We're playing 2 Lord Skitters. Lord Skitters is a 3-mana 3/3 Rat Noble. When another rat enters the battlefield under your control, exile up to 1 target card from an opponent's graveyard, which is relevant sometimes. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, create a 1/1 black rat creature token with this creature can't block. This is just a way to flood the board. It's a must answer because if it sits, you'll just get 1/1, and then next turn you get another 1/1, next turn you get another 1/1, and it will eventually become overwhelming. And really that's what this deck's about, is just presenting as many must answers as possible. We're playing 4 Rafine, and this is really the card that holds the deck together. It's definitely the glue of the deck. It's a 3-mana 1/4 with flying and ward 1. Whenever you attack, target attacking creature connives X, where X is the number of attacking creatures. Where connive is you draw X cards, discard X cards, and you put a +1/+1 counter on that creature for each non-land card discarded this way. So it's hard to remove because of the ward. It's flying, which is awesome. And then when we jam with Rafine and any number of other creatures, we can pump up those creatures in a way that makes blocking really bad for our opponent, but we can also filter through our deck for cards that we need and discard things that we don't, which is extremely powerful, especially when we're flooding the board with cards like Lord Skitter and Wedding Announcement. We're playing 3 Virtue of Loyalty. Its Adventure is a 2-mana instant that's created 2/2 Night Creature token with Vigilance, which is a 2/2 for 2 with Vigilance is already totally fine, but it being an instant speed means it can act as a removal spell sometimes as well. And then it's a 5-mana enchantment that says at the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control and untap those creatures. Just another way to make every creature you draw just insane, make it so that you can win the game very easily, while it also doing something in the early game. Both very powerful. We're playing 3 Denk. Denk is just a good sticky creature that blocks really well. It has lifelink. It's a 2-mana 2/3 with lifelink. Cards in graveyards can't be the target of spells or abilities, which is sometimes relevant. And then you can disturb it when it's from the graveyard to make it a 3/2 flyer, where whenever 1 or more creature cards are put into graveyards from anywhere, investigate. This ability triggers only once each turn. What's kind of cool about Denk is against aggressive decks, we like playing Denk because it's a 2/3 blocker. And against mid-range decks, we like playing Denk because once it's removed, you can bring it back into something that can make you draw additional cards or apply a lot of pressure in the air. A kind of cool synergy with Denk is it's really good discard fodder for Rafine, because especially against like mid-range decks and stuff like that, because we can still get value out of the card after we put it into our graveyard, where no other cards in our deck we can still get value when it's in our graveyard besides grabbing it with like Takenuma or something. We're playing 2 Shieldred the Apocalypse. Shieldred's just a super high power level threat. It's a 4-mana 4/5 Death Touch. Whenever you draw a card, gain 2 life. Whenever opponents draw a card, they lose 2 life. We're drawing a bunch of cards with Rafine. That's like a really, really cool synergy that you can have, and it's just yet another must answer threat. And we're playing 3 Fairy Mastermind. It's a 2-mana 2/1 with Flash. Flying. Flash is relevant because we can leave our counter spells and removal spells up, and whenever an opponent draws their second card each turn, you draw a card, and you can pay 4 mana to have each player draw a card, which has some really cool synergies with like Shieldred, right? We can pay 4 mana to have each of us draw a card, and then that means I gain 2 life and my opponent loses 2 life. Both very powerful effects. And Wandering Emperor is just another super powerful must-answer card. It's a 4-mana Planeswalker with Flash. It starts with 3 loyalty. And if it enters the battlefield this turn, you may activate her loyalty abilities anytime you can cast an instant, which means during combat, you can flash it in and put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature against first strike till end of turn to mess up combat. Or more likely what happens is when your opponent attacks, you flash it in to create a 2/2 Samurai and then block, or exile a tapped creature and you gain 2 life. All of these very good against mid-range decks. It's a sticky threat against those mid-range and control decks, but also decent against the aggressive decks because of the gain 2 life and exile effect. And while there is some play and interaction and understanding when to leave counter magic up and understanding what cards are relevant in our opponent's deck and knowing what to connive with Rafine, this by and large is just about applying as much pressure as possible and play the best card in your hand, which makes it so powerful in Standard. As far as our sideboard goes, Destroy Evil is in mostly for the mirror match, but dealing with enchantments and these things that have toughness 4 or greater, like Rafine and Shieldred, and dealing with Wedding Announcement or Virtue of Loyalty, stuff like that. Knockout Blow is for our mono-red matchups, dealing 4 damage to an attacking or blocking creature, gain 2 life for 1 mana if it's a red creature. Farewell is great against these slower creature decks, again, like the mirror match, for when we really need to hit the reset button. We're only playing 1 because we'd like to just be ahead most of the time. Disdainful Stoke is really, really good against ramp, countering a spell with mana value 4 or greater. Negate is decent against ramp and also the control decks, working 2 mana to counter target non-creature spell. Cut Down, we've already talked about, is for the aggressive decks like Soldiers and Mono Red. Duress is just an awesome card. Again, in the matchups that you'd side in Negate, you likely also side in Duress in the control and ramp decks. Anoint with Affliction is just like a solid removal spell. 2 mana, exile a creature, mana value 3 or less. The Corrupted is never really going to happen, but it can just like cleanly deal with cards like Denk and stuff like that. Or sometimes if people are playing the Soldier Lord, which less people are, you know, being able to remove that is just powerful. Glistening Deluge, mostly for the Soldiers deck. 3 mana sorcery, all creatures get -1/-1 till end of turn, and creatures that are green and or white get an additional -2/-2 till end of turn. It's just a 3 mana board wipe for the Soldier deck that can get out of hand super quickly. And we're playing a Kaido Shizuki, 3 mana Planeswalker that starts at 3 loyalty. At the beginning of your end step, if Kaido entered the battlefield this turn, he phases out. Then you +1 to draw a card, then discard a card unless you attack this turn. -2 to create a 1/1 blue ninja creature token with this creature can't be blocked. And -7 to create an emblem that says whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, search your library for a blue or black creature card, put it onto the battlefield, and then shuffle. Kaido's just an awesome card to just like push your advantage once you're already like a tiny bit ahead so your opponent can't catch up, and is really good in the mid-range and control matchups just to do exactly that. That is the Esper mid-range deck in Standard. If you like this video and want to see more videos like this, please be sure to like and subscribe. Check me out on social medias. Links are above me and in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.